the wonderful singing and beautiful music, and it was very lovely, Diane and Stella. Where are you from, Stella? Cincinnati. Oh, okay. It's not that far away. No. Do you want to join our church? Do you want to? Would you get some, Barrett, would you get some pledge envelopes? Stella's interested in joining our...
I'm afraid my fellow Lutherans would.
They wouldn't like that. Okay, well, I can understand. Thank you. Thank you. There's a little story I want to start off with, and it's about this pastor who always gives us these sermonette little talks to the kids every Sunday and teaching them some things and asking them questions. And the pastor asks these kids this one particular question. He says, now, what's furry and has a long tail and climbs trees and you find it in your backyard? And one little boy answered, he said, I know the answer's Jesus, but it sure sounds like a squirrel to me. Now, I told you that because I want to tell you this. There was a conference on comparative religions, and experts many years ago, and experts from many faiths debated on what, if any, belief was unique to the Christian faith. What is unique? C.S. Lewis wandered into this place, into the room, and the question was posed to him. What is Christianity's unique contribution among world religions? And Lewis responded, he said, oh, that's easy. It's grace. Grace. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. They all agreed with Lewis. The idea of God's love coming to us free of charge, no strings attached, is unique. The Buddhist Eightfold Path, the Hindu doctrine of karma, the Jewish covenant, the Muslim code of the law, each one of them offers a way to earn approval. Only Christianity dares to make God's love unconditional. Grace is something that costs everything for the giver and nothing for the receiver. It is truly an amazing word. And I think it is our best word of what God is up to in the church today. It is grace. It is what the church can give that the world cannot. Before the start of a particular church service, an older woman kept focusing, she sat in the back, focusing up front at the front pews of this small child who was sitting in the front, and he's turning around and he's grinning. He's smiling at everybody. He wasn't making lots of noise, he wasn't kicking and rolling around, he wasn't tearing pages out of the hymnal. He was just looking behind and smiling at all the people during that quiet, somber organ prelude to the service. And suddenly his mother grabbed him by the shoulders and jerked him around and sat him firmly in the pew, and sternly she whispered, a whisper that could be heard all over the sanctuary. She said, "Stop that grinning, you're in church." And the little boy, tears started coming down his face. And the woman, the older woman who was watching all this thing, she became angry about it. And we get it, It seems like the whole world is in tears. She wanted to grab this child, as I know you probably would too, this tear-stained face, and hold him close and tell him about the real God, the happy God, the smiling God, the God with such a great sense of humor that he would create somebody like you and me. How foolish! The mother was sitting next to the only light left in civilization, the only hope, the only miracle, the only promise of eternity, the only source of grace. If he couldn't smile in church, then where is he supposed to go? People are looking for grace. They're hungry for it like bread, and they are burdened. They're burdened with bitterness and blindness and despair and guilt and shame. I read recently that the 3 most common sources of crippling shame are unaccepting parents, secular culture, and graceless religion. Like city dwellers who no longer notice the polluted air. They breathe in this atmosphere of ungrace in this dog-eat-dog survival of the fittest, look out for numero uno, superficial culture or consumer-driven world. And how many times have I heard it? someone whose life is a mess and they're hurting and they need help, and the subject of church comes up and they say, church, why would I go to church? I feel guilty enough. That's not what church is about. Unfortunately, there are still a few who might accommodate them in their guilt, but not here. Not at this church, not at St. Mark's, not while we still have breath in our body. For this is not an institution for the righteous, it is a hospital for sinners. It is not a palace for the perfect, but a home for the heartbroken. It is not a hotel for the heavenly, it is a refuge for the weary. That's what we're about. It is grace, and grace is the command of Jesus, who told story after story, and he called them parables, about extravagant grace, like the lost son, the prodigal son, and the father running to embrace him, or the lost sheep, where the good shepherd leaves the 99 and goes and finds the one, or the lost coin, the woman who looks all over for her special coin, she finds it. They all seem to have the same point, the loser's sense of loss, the thrill of discovery, and in the end, it is joy. It is joy, it is grace. Jesus is saying in those stories, in those parables, in effect, he's saying, do you want to know what it's like to be like God? When one of you two-legged humans pays attention to me, comes to me, it feels like I just reclaimed my most valuable possession, my lost love, the child I run to embrace. God rejoices, not because all the problems of the world are solved, not because all the pain has ceased, not because we have our theology right. God rejoices because I was lost and now I am found. I was blind and now I see. I was bound, but now I'm free. I was dead, but now I'm alive. And that's why communion, the Lord's Supper, is at the center of our worship. It's not the readings, they're great. It's not the prayers. It's not the sermon, It's not even the creeds. The center of our service is communion, where we unite together and we receive the humanity of God in the bread and the life of God represented by the cup. That's the meal. Irma Bombeck, remember Irma Bombeck? She was a while ago. She once wrote, she said, I've been on a constant diet for the last decade. I've lost 789 pounds. By all accounts, I should be hanging on a charm bracelet, she says. And I thought about all the foods that we have a garden, and this time of year where we're harvesting all these great foods, broccoli, high in antioxidants, radishes. Sam likes radishes and raw onions, 6-year-old Sam. I think artichokes are the most annoying because eating them is like licking postage stamps. Don't you agree? Carrots are good for the eyes, and garlic is good for your blood, and rhubarb we have rhubarb, it's sour and it's abrasive, and of course all the notorious villains in history ate rhubarb. Attila, Ivan the Terrible, and of course Conan the Rhubarbarian. It's pretty bad, isn't it? Now watermelon's a good food. You eat it, you drink it, you wash your face in it all at the same time. Watermelon's great. And I'm on a fairly new diet. I'm a totally committed, almost vegetarian. That's who I am. Not that I'm trying to lose weight. I want to be healthy, and I do eat meat that's high in protein and iron. I just don't eat too much of it. And when I do eat meat, I want it to come from a humane source. And like a lot of you, I like bread. I like bread too much, actually, but I try to stay away from white bread. It's not good for you. And there's actually an Italian saying that goes something like this: the whiter the bread, the sooner you'll be dead. So stay away from the all-white, bleached, processed bread. Now, the wonderful thing about the mysterious communion that we all take is the grace that we received. This grace, this blessing, this love that is transferred from God to you. And we go to it because we know it's good food, it's good for us. We just need to feel hunger for it. And we need to learn how to eat it. And we need to know where it comes from. It is heavenly food. It is the grace that only God knows how you need this particular moment. Do you like foreign films? We have these friends back east, in eastern Michigan, I should say, and they're always giving us these weird foreign films, movies about a German Cajun accordion player or a Japanese undertaker who learns the sacredness of life and death. And these movies, these foreign movies, are usually slow going at first, and then they kind of build, and they have subtitles, and there's not much violence in them, which is good. And they often have something that most American movies don't have. It's, what's it called? Oh yeah, a good story. That's what they have. They have a good story. And this particular foreign movie that I saw spoke to me about the Lord's Supper. And so I want to end with this movie. It's about these two pious sisters. It was also a good book, and I know Olga's here, so she'll probably recognize it right away. It's about these two sisters. They're pious sisters, and they're on this island, and they live with these church people, and it's an impoverished fishing village. And they lived like Puritans, and everybody knows what a Puritan is, right? A Puritan is a person with a haunting fear that someone somewhere is having a good time. That's a Puritan. And this church, they all wore black, and their diet consisted of boiled cod and gruel. And over the years, the pastor died, and the spinster sisters, they took over, and they who were once beautiful, they became cynical and bitter and hardened. And the few remaining church people, they argued and they frowned a lot, and they're joyless. And there were even these two women, they hadn't spoken to each other in a decade. And this is a small church gathering. I mean, for Christians, they had lost all sense of grace. One rainy night, there was a knock on the door, and the sisters opened the door, and a woman collapsed in a swoon. Her name was Babette. Babette. And they took Babette in, and she lived with the sisters for many years and did the work and the housekeeping, and she cooked her broiled fish and gruel. And she brought new life to the village, and Babette's only link to her former life in France was this lottery ticket that her friend renewed for her every year. And of course, one day, she got the news she had won the lottery, and she received 10,000 francs. And the sisters congratulated her, but inwardly they were sad because they knew Babette would be moving back to France. Babette decided to prepare a delicious meal, a dinner for the sisters and about 9 other church members and a couple of other guests. So she poured out all of her compassion and her love in an act of self-sacrifice, and she prepared all these courses, all this food, and she served them a real French dinner, a heavenly metaphor for communion, for the heavenly banquet. The pious, puritanical people, they tried hard not to enjoy the meal too much. They tried to keep expressionless faces and not say much, but they couldn't help it. And gradually the banquet worked its magic, and their blood warmed, and the Spirit flowed, and grace was present in that meal. And soon, as they savored every bite and they gently sipped every rare wine, a woman burped, and the guy next to her said without thinking, "Hallelujah!" To try that next time. The people who once begrudged each other and been silent, they found new life and love, and they forgave, and they talked, and they visited, and they laughed. It was a communion meal because it was all about receiving life. And in that final scene, with a pile of unwashed dishes and greasy pots in the background and broken crates behind her, the sisters said to Babette, "We will always remember this meal after you return to Paris," where she was a famous chef. And Babette says, "I'm not leaving. I'm staying with you. because we're family, we're together. And they found out that she had spent her entire winnings, every last franc, on that feast they had just devoured. It was a totally, expensively, irresponsible thing to do. But oh, what a moment it was. And they didn't know how to react, and they didn't know what to say. "You're going to be poor now," one sister cried. Babette said, "An artist is never really poor." Babette's feast is a parable of grace, a gift that cost everything for the giver and nothing for the recipient. Christians have spent enormous energy debating about what communion means, fighting over who is right and who's wrong, but the bottom line is it's all about grace and how Christ gave everything, who stays with us, feeding us forever. Amen.